The second big one, and this is quite generic amongst all viruses, though some are more prone to this than others, is that is this property of mutation. So living viruses, so viruses aren't living,
Well,
though there's kind of
well, that's a
debate on it.
debatable topic. We're not going to get into that.
They're not the same as all other living
Mm,
organisms. I think they honestly deserve to be put into a class of their own
mm.
because they're definitely um,
They're different.
parasitic. But one of the things that marks them is their rate of mutation, and HIV mutates extremely fast, and this makes it able to adapt to a lot of treatments a lot of the treatments that we can use to treat this disease. For instance, when we first started administering the antiretroviral drugs to HIV patients, they got better and then they got worse again. And this is because the virus mutated to be immune or resistant to that particular drug. So what we do now is we administer a combination therapy of at least three, I think it is at the moment,
Mm,
different antiretroviral drugs, which makes the chance of a virus becoming immune to all three of them at once or resistant to all three much, much lower. And that's how we've been able to extend the lifespan. But this mutation rate is a property of the HIV virus. And it's not something that we have found an effective way around yet. It's kind of an arms race between us and them, our
mm,
drugs and the virus's mutation
mm.
ability. And the final one he notes, though this is by no means comprehensive, is the complexity of drug design and development. So you can't just get a compound from a duck or whatever you want and then it's the cure for cancer. That kind of sounds obvious when you say it like that, but even if you find something that is possibly a cure, you have to go through all these different trials. It costs about at least $1 billion to get a compound from discovery to actually going through the different human trials and bringing it to market, which is why there's so few of them at the moment. It costs pharmaceutical companies a huge amount to develop all of these drugs, and some of them don't even work. You're going to have failures right the way along
Along the
the
chain.
curve
Mm,
from discovery right the way through to end product. Um, and that's because the human body and any kind of a viral infection, particularly HIV, is complex. And one drug doesn't do the job. Like we just said, you need to design multiple, and the multiple drugs have to interact with the virus in multiple different ways. And that way has to be sustainable, but not too sustainable. And there's all these other considerations to go into it, as well as consistently developing new ones.
yeah. And of course, always there's the thing that even if people see pharmaceutical companies as giant evil robots, as pharmaceutical companies are staffed by people. And so the chances are that every single scientist working in every single pharmaceutical company in the world thinks that it's okay to let people suffer and die due to HIV and AIDS is fairly unlikely. There's also potentially a lot of money, there's huge money to be made in a vaccine or a cure for this terrible disease too. So he does say, look, let's be careful here of what we assume people are capable of.
Particularly when it comes to science and
Mm,
technologists. My favourite part of this is at the very bottom. He has a footnote on this post, and he notes that in a survey of New Zealand scientists and technologists, the two biggest reasons for becoming one of those two was the search for truth and the desire to improve the human condition.
mm.
And that to me sums it up, right?
Anecdotally, it's something I'm sure you have as well. I've heard over and over and over again from scientists. They're not in it for the big money or the fame. They're in it to try and help a lot of the
You
time.
know, if you're in science for the big money, then I think you've misunderstood something along the road there.
Yeah, indeed. So a really, really interesting article. Thank you, Michael. It's also nice to see when people go and codify it to this extent. So next time I hear somebody rabbiting on about this, rather than myself going, well, blah, 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 I can just point them to something like this, which is great. Um, and so with that, we'll start wrapping up. Firstly, a reminder to everyone just to check out the Sciblogs events calendar at sciblogs.co.nz/events. There is a ton of interesting stuff on this week. There are multiple conferences, for example, the International Congress for Conservation Biology at 2 o'clock on Monday. There are the results of the first International Marine Conservation Think Tank, which will be coming out. There are talks with people about digital security, zero-sum games over whaling, the whole shooting match. It all looks like fascinating stuff. And also do have a look, and we will link to it, out relatively recently, just a couple of days ago, is a 1.5 hour interview by Stephen Colbert, the American satirist, I suppose one could call him. He's very, very good. And he is interviewing Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is a superstar sort of astronomy, cosmology, star physics kind of guy, if one has to put it like that. And in fact, Neil deGrasse Tyson is going to be redoing the very famous series Cosmos, originally filmed with Carl Sagan as the host in the sort of 70s, 80s. So not only are we looking forward to the remake, but I would suggest that everybody just goes and has a listen to Steve talking with Neil about science and the beauty of science and the mystery of it as well.
Yeah. And without further ado, I guess we'll finish up. And by finishing up, we have to say thanks to everyone who makes this podcast possible. So to State Shirt and Rian Shian for our opening and closing themes, respectively. And to Sciblogs and the wonderful Scibloggers for providing us with stories and discussion topics and interesting points of view. Remember, you can subscribe to TOSP, the official Sciblogs podcast, via iTunes. Just follow the links on the associated post that goes along with this podcast. You can also follow or listen to us via YouTube at our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/user/Sciblogs podcast. Or you can follow our RSS feed via the Sciblogs website, which is sciblogs.co.nz/TOSP. You can find us and other quality science podcasts at sciencepodcasters.org. If you have any comments or suggestions, please put something on our blog. And if you like us, make sure to write a review and rate the podcast on iTunes because it helps put us up on the front page. Or share a link to this week's podcast on Twitter or Facebook so that you and your friends and your mum and your dad and your sister and your cat can find us too. You can follow Sciblogs posts by subscribing to emails, Twitter or RSS, or just by visiting the main Sciblogs homepage, sciblogs.co.nz, and you can help support the site by getting Sciblogs apparel, thanks to our lovely Amy, by going to www.zazzle.com/Aimee, AIMEEMW. And you can follow Amy and myself via Twitter, TEH_AIMEE, or Kaiwata, KAIWHATA, respectively, or via our respective Sciblogs. Other than that, from us and all of the Scibloggers at Sciblogs, we think you should stay curious.
See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.